Welcome to another week of Behind the Lens. End of February 2018. Hard to believe. The second month of the year is already gone. And of course, this is also Oscar week and Spirit Awards week, which is always my favorite day for awards. That'll be Saturday before the Oscars on Sunday. But welcome to Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens. You can read my movie reviews, interviews, and hear them in print and online around the globe 24/7. But every Monday, you will find me right here on Adrenaline Radio at 11 o'clock, at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I did say that right, 11 a.m. Pacific? Yes, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And it is a joy to be here again with you. Very, very, very fun show I'm looking forward to today with two very interesting movies. One deals with dysfunctional relationships, which I love, and comedy. The other one deals with hypochondria and comedy. So I think we've got a win-win for you today. At the quarter-hour mark, Michele Remsen, writer, director, and actor in Toss It, will be joining us live. And I got to tell you, Michele Remsen is a force of nature. She's a playwright. She's written for television, for stage, now movies, and now she's directing her first feature film. So I can't wait to talk to her. I really like her character development in this film, so I'm anxious to hear what she has to say about her inspiration for some of these characters. Because I got to tell you, some of them could have come out of my family. Then at the half-hour mark, we've got PORTER and MAX AZULAY joining us to talk about their new film, Five Doctors, a comedy of hypochondria. The film is so much fun, and you will be able to get Five Doctors tomorrow on digital and DVD, and VOD. Yeah, digital and VOD tomorrow. So that's exciting. And Michele, we're getting Michele fresh off her Hollywood, Real Independent Film Festival screening last night. So I'm sure she's going to either be partied out or full of energy. I'm not sure which. But I understand it was a very well-received screening. So I'm just very excited about having all three of them on the show today. And let's give you a little heads up here. We have a very, very special guest coming next week on March 5th. The legendary Dick Cavett is joining us live at the half-hour mark of the show, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. So that is something that nobody wants to miss. Dick Cavett on Behind the Lens. That's thrilling to me. And of course, then a couple weeks later, yesterday I just sat down for a one-on-one with Dennis Quaid, as well as Madeline Carroll, to talk about their new film, which is I Can Only Imagine, based on the incredible story of Bart Millard, renowned frontman for the Christian band Mercy Me, and one of the best-selling songs of all time, I Can Only Imagine. The film will be out in a couple weeks. They're asking us to hold all reviews and interviews until the week of release, which is why you will hear from my Dennis Quaid interview on the March 12th show. Very insightful character you haven't seen from Dennis before. So that'll be exciting to share that with all of you. But in the interim, something we're going to share with you today is, of course, Black Panther is still top of the leaderboard here in the box office, and with good reason. We've talked about it. You heard my exclusive interview with Hannah Beachler, production designer, a couple weeks ago. The film truly is. Production values are off the charts, and I'll say it again, that Hannah Beachler, as well as costume designer Ruth Carter, will get Oscar nominations next year. Their work in Black Panther is incredible. For me, that's where the money shows. All the money, the whole budget of Black Panther you see on screen. There aren't too many movies you can say that about, but the detail, when you look at Ruth Carter's costumes, the color design, the fabrications, the jewelry that was custom designed. Similarly with Hannah's production design and the big set pieces. There is so much attention to detail and specificity that went into creating the world of Wakanda that it's mind blowing. I actually did pay money to go see it again just because of the richness of detail, more so than the story, but the actual production values of the film. But there's one character that I dearly love in Black Panther, and that is Agent Everett Ross. We first met Agent Ross in Captain America Civil War. Well, he's back, played by the wonderful Martin Freeman. And much like Clark Gregg's character started out, a smaller character who then gets to evolve into and have his own hero moments. And of course, we all know what happened with Clark Gregg. He went on to, they created Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I truly hope that we see a lot more of Agent Everett Ross because he is a lot of fun. He is a lot of fun in Black Panther, especially when he teams up with Letitia Wright. The two of them have an incredible repartee and comedic timing together that is so much fun. But during the recent press conference, I had a chance to specifically ask Martin Freeman about his role as Agent Everett Ross. Take a listen.
Congratulations, guys. An incredible job. W. Elias behind the lens. Ryan, I just have to tell you, your production values, off the charts. Your team delivered for you. But I want to ask Martin, you get to have a role that we've seen with other people, such as Clark Gregg in the Marvel Universe, morph into something great. You really morph here. Can you talk about the experience of being Agent Ross and actually becoming a hero in his own right?
Yeah, no, that was lovely. And I'd spoken to Ryan a bit about that in the sort of in the process before filming. And we both agreed that we didn't want him just to be a schmuck, you know, we didn't want him just to be just a sort of comic foil. That it needs to be a little bit more 3D than that. And I was very pleased when I was reading, you know, bits of the script and then new bits of the script that were coming that were making him more empathetic and more sympathetic and a bit more can-do, you know, because it was clear it's not Agent Ross's film by a long way, but he plays his part in it, you know, and there is a sort of ambivalence about Ross, I think, you know, because you're not quite sure if he's going to be down with T'Challa or not, but he ends up having his eyes opened by this country that he knew nothing about and a civilization that he knew nothing about, and realizing that it had something to offer and that he went away learning a bit from it, you know. So I was very pleased that Ross had his kind of moment of heroism at the end, you know. He gets in his plane and he gets to help out. He has his little Han Solo moment. So I was really pleased, and I thought that was generous on the film's part, and I thought it was, because like Andy says, you know, that we're not short of white heroes in movies, you know, so I thought to give one of the two white characters a bit of a heroic moment, I thought spoke very well of them, actually, yeah.
And yes, indeed, it does speak very, very highly of Marvel and where they're going with their franchises, with the development, with the celebration within Black Panther and its casting. And I fully believe we're going to see this is going to be the new trend of what's going to be coming down the pike. But I, for one, I want to see more from Martin Freeman as Agent Ross, because if for those few of you out there that haven't seen Black Panther yet, it is a lot of fun to watch Martin as he gets his Han Solo moment to play with high tech, high technology, and have all that little boy exuberance and energy come out. And it's a glorious moment. His climactic moment in the third act is just such a joy to watch unfold. So I think, let's see, because we don't have time to do another clip of anybody, do we, Pam? No. So why don't we're going to take a short public service announcement break. And by then, Michele Remsen will probably be calling in when we come back. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, kids, the campfire's out. Let's hit the road.
Dad, the fire's not out. It's still smoking.
No, close enough.
Come on, Dad, do your homework. If it's too hot to touch, then it's too hot to leave.
I knew that.
You're never too young to get your smoky on. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Oh my, and Pam brought us back because Pam saw the little red light blinking. And yes, I always love it when she plays that PSA for me with my friend Sam Elliott. And yes, only you can prevent wildfires, forest fires, and every other kind of fires. So now, right now, as soon as Pam puts Michele on hold, because she's chatting and talking to her. That's what I love. Pam is a wonderful sound engineer. So all talent, whenever you call in, it's Pam you get to talk to first. And she's actually quite nice. So don't be afraid. But here we go. Welcome to Michele Remsen. Hello, Michele.
Hello, Debbie. Hi.
I am so excited to have you on Behind the Lens today. This is a wonderful treat, especially after you had a screening yesterday at the Hollywood Real Independent Film Festival. I hear it went very well.
It was really well received.
Well, it should be, because this is a really fun movie to watch. And I think everybody in the world has had a dysfunctional relationship and family at some point.
Yes, it's pretty universal.
I mean, this is a big leap for you. As I was saying at the top of the show, you're a playwright. You write for stage. You've written for TV. I mean, you're an actress. Now you're a feature film director on top of it, and you're doing everything but bringing the kitchen sink into play here as your writer, director, and acting in this fun show. And I just want to know where this came from. And, of course, let us just get this out there right away. Eagles fans, yes, we are celebrating the Eagles, so the film could not have come out more timely. Yes. I started cheering when I heard that. I did not do the Eagles victory song, but, and I'm sure that comes from your days at Bryn Mawr. You developed a love for the Eagles?
Well, Bryn Mawr isn't exactly a football school, but it's in the hood. it's in the hood. So where did this story come from? This story of Emily and Finn and the bunch of dysfunctional misfits that surround them, which I think contributes to their issues. Yes, exactly. That's we often see these sort of not cliche, but standard types in romantic movies of the charming, non-committal guy and witty, wary woman. And I wanted to find out, well, why are they like that? And so I had written a short play for my theater company. We had a show in February we do called My Bitter Valentine about love gone wrong. And I had written this one play, and I never produced it. And they moved back to New York. Someone actually wanted to act with me, so I sort of wrote it on request about the last two bitter singles at a wedding. And when I read it in New York, it went down really well, and then people wanted to know what happened next. And so I had to answered the question. Again, someone gave me an evening at 92Y Tribeca to read some of my work, and so I kept having to sort of, write a little more material, and then I did a full reading of it at EST, and then people really liked it. And when I wanted to make my first feature to sort of open the door for my larger projects, I thought this was a small enough script that I could raise the funds, through debt and donations to shoot it. And so it was sort of an accident, but as I went through it, I realized it raised some interesting questions, and I went deeper and sort of pulled the curtain back on all the sort of traditions of Western Civ, basically.
No, I mean and you keep your ensemble cast small. This very much is an ensemble cast.
Yes, it really is.
And I have to you playing opposite Phil Burke. You two have a great screen chemistry.
Thank you.
It
was great fun to spar with.
That's actually what the characters of Emily and Finn do. They spar from beginning to end. But it's so delicious and so fun. The dialogue is great. It's very witty banter, but it's so relatable. It's so resonant for everybody listening.
That's what I found. So when I did the first thing, people talked about, all the stuff that happens at weddings, and it's very, charged atmosphere, and then I was like, right, you're going to be surrounded by all these people, for better or worse. And so that's how they sort of all got drawn into the story, and, starts to explain who the two central characters are, but also, how they got there, because I wanted all the ensemble to be very fleshed out and not make them just sort of, devices to move the central characters forward. I wanted them to be real people as people are in life. And so that's why it became this really a true ensemble, and because everybody, either prodded or pushed the other character to the truth, whether they wanted to get there or not.
And because you fleshed them out so thoroughly, it really lets us understand and see why Finn is the way he is and why Emily is the way she is.
Yeah, I it was one of those things. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Oh, I got a little feedback.
No.
Yeah, that was the big thing that I always sort of saw. Like, I loved those old screwball comedies, from the black and white days, like Bringing Up Baby, Philadelphia Story, and the witty banter has long been a tradition of a lot of films, but you never really understand how they got to that moment. And so that's when I wanted to dig a little deeper, and I sort of had to answer those questions, and then put that on. When I was answering them, I was like, well, that's actually part of the story. It's not just me to understand it. I think people need to see this, and then to make that active between all the characters made it a very active movie rather than just people discussing it. It was and also because everybody had such strong actions about what they wanted or didn't want.
And of course, you also throw in some great moments of physical slapstick comedy as well, which that for me just completes the whole package. That really does. It does hearken to the original screwball comedies. Very much of this, I kept thinking the Philadelphia Story.
One of my favorite movies.
I really kept thinking the Philadelphia Story, with the sparring with Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant. You don't get much better than that, and that's very much what we were seeing with Emily and Finn.
Yeah, but I was hoping to kind of update it with today's issues and people who've had their own baggage and also to sort of re-examine the stuff that we sort of usually take for granted or, blindly follow traditions. And, if people kick against it or suddenly life throws them a curveball, how do they respond and what do they discover in that?
Well, now I'm curious because since you knew you would be using this as your foray into feature directing, what was your process like? You've written the script. Knowing you were going to direct, did you start shot listing? Did you start envisioning, getting the imagery in your mind of what you wanted to see on screen? How did you start approaching the visual look? And from there, end up developing with your cinematographer, George Barnes, the whole the tonal bandwidth?
Well, a lot of it had to do with, the necessity of, we had a very tight shoot. It was only 12 days. I was originally wanting to do it in 3 weeks, but he could get this amazing crew for 2. And so I had to tighten up the shot list, but there was a lot of pre-prep. And I fortunately had my cousin's lovely home in which to shoot, so I had a lot of time to figure out the shots ahead of time.
And that is a lovely home.
Hmm?
That is a very lovely home.
It was really perfect for it. And it was also really easy to get the camera done because of the open floor plan. It made it really interesting for camera angles and movement. So it was a win-win. And the other sets, I found locations that were dressed because of the tight shoot. We didn't really have much time to go in and dress sets or build, any sort of production design. So I fortunately found a beautiful hotel, the Wales Hotel in New York, where we did all the wedding sequence. And then I shot some of the stuff around my neighborhood in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It was all shot in New York, actually. Mm-hmm. And the hotel on the Out Hotel, which was what's called that mid-century modern thing, which became the whole L.A. Vegas sequence. And so I knew visually, I wanted to look, sort of like, here's what you're expecting, this beautiful sort of rom-com, and this way the shots begin are sort of slow-mo and gliding, and they're very composed and classical. And then as things go more and more, get more and more tossed and go off the rails, the camera angles start to get a little, jump, especially like in the fight sequence, and even when they're dancing, it's a little more uncertain. So we sort of knew together, like, where the arc of the camera setups and movement would go. And then we worked with the various locations, also sort of color-wise, the formality of the hotel, and then, working in the sort of the warmth of the outside. And the kitchen, fortunately, had that lovely sort of warm, glowy color to it, which is also nice to end up there, because I always knew I wanted the movie to open where most rom-coms end, in the black tie and the gown and everybody's dancing. And instead we end up in the messy kitchen in the morning with our new life.
Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, I really want that kitchen. That is a beautiful kitchen. And you're right, the golden glow, just from the cabinetry in there, and the light plays so beautifully on that. You and George came up with this really beautiful natural lighting palette.
Yes, he fortunately owns all of the wonderful Arri Alexa gear, and we had a great gaffer, Umpire Gaushin, who together we just, I really wanted it to look like, the real world, but it was also shot it in the summer, so there was a lot of beautiful warmth around us, and I think that was important too for the story and the tone, because there's a lot of sparring, but there's also like all this heart beneath it, because they're all sort of fighting for their lives in a way.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's just the whole visual look. It's so pleasing and very embraceable. There's nothing jarring. Color is basic. You don't use any kind of, you let, like the neon lights of Vegas, okay, which is, by the way, that footage is absolutely gorgeous in there. I don't know if you used stock footage for that or if you shot it, but
some of the was a little stock for some of the big, because they didn't have the budget to take us there. I wanted to in the original budget, but
no money for drones and cranes, huh?
Not right now.
But you've also got, and I've got to ask you about your editor, Lorna Chin, and the time you spent in the editing bay. What was your editing process like on this one? Because you're not only directing and looking at it from that viewpoint. As an actor, I can only imagine you're sitting there with her, and it's like you're looking even at yourself going, oh, that's a really good shot of me. Maybe I should leave that in. Or that's a real, oh, I don't look too good there. Let's let's plug in a coverage shot there. What was that experience like for you in the editing bay with Lorna?
Well, I'll tell you about it. Here's the secret weapon to the whole thing. Lorna Chin is also the DIT. She and George have worked together for like 20 years. So she was on set as we shot, and George also has this customized van where inside he had an editing switch. And so Warner was basically pulling footage and assembling, so we could make sure we had all our coverage as we went, because we only sometimes had sets or locations for a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really key. And then because she knew the movie so intimately, once we got into actual editing it, she knew all of the different coverage. We marked which ones, of course, we thought were the best takes, but she knew all the, all the material really well. It wasn't like she was unfamiliar with it. She also knew the actors, because she was on the set with us. So I think that really helped, get into the sort of intimacy of the editing, because it's all about, the relationships and the pacing, and so because she actually heard it, it was good for us to, sit there and comb through it and let's take a breath out there, let's cut there, try to recapture that moment, that was live, because sometimes you don't know much of one master, So
Yeah.
She was amazing, an absolute wizard, as far as editing, with, like I said, we had 12 days, so we had minimal coverage. We did our masters, our mids, and our close-ups, and George was great at that. We had his whole crew were like elves. They just always had every setup ready, so we weren't kept waiting. So we had a few options, and also everybody line ready, so they just dove in. And so we didn't have a lot of options, but they were all very fresh and vital. So Lorna had a lot to work with. And it was great working with her. We did a lot of it over the phone. She was in Florida, but we Skyped and shared screens, and I'd give her notes and work on it. And she was an absolute pleasure to work with, and just incredibly top notch.
No, because the pacing of the film, it goes at there's a nice flow to it. There's a nice flow to it. So as an audience, you don't feel bogged down. You don't feel stuck, or it's like, okay, what's going to happen? Or you also don't feel inundated with anything. You really have a very evenly paced film.
Good. Yeah, I was trying to, make it flow, even though a lot happens, and then give people some time, to breathe between moments, So it's a tricky thing. I think comedy's hard to cut, because you don't know. If you've done this live in front of an audience, you think you know where the laughs are, but, you have to figure out how much gap to leave if they laugh, or not to leave too much if they don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky thing, and I'm glad it seems slow, and I think most people seem to get every now and then. When I watched the screen last night, sometimes I was like, oh, I could have used a little more air there because that one line got hidden, but, that's... Overall, I think most of it is heard. And though I do hear people say they'd like to watch it again because they just want to go over some of those lines because they enjoyed them. So that's really heartening to hear.
Well, and that's just it. The dialogue is so great. You do want to hear it all. So, because it is so much fun to hear it. But I'm curious.
Okay.
I'm curious for you.
Yeah.
Here you are directing your first feature, directing yourself. So my favorite question to ask actor-directors, how well did Michele take direction, and how difficult was actor Michele for director Michele to work with?
Surprisingly good.
Wow.
No, like I said, I had originally written the role because someone wanted to act as me, and then as I went through it and wrote it, I was like, well, this is fun, and I played it, and I also knew it so well, and also when you only have 12 days, it was like I didn't really have time to direct somebody else in it because it's like I already knew it. So in the end, it was great fun to play with everybody, and also walking into it, I sort of knew what marks I had to hit, and if I wanted to go back and do it again, we'd do another adjustment. But it sort of helped, I think, at least for this story, move the tight shoot quickly because I knew it, so well, and so it helped. And I didn't give myself any grief.
So now that you've made it through your first feature, what did you learn about yourself as a director, as a writer, that you can now take forward into future projects? Because I am guessing you are going to be directing again.
I hope to. I'm working on setting up my second feature, and I also have a comedy series that I'd like to shop, and that's basically sort of an 8-episode first season's already written with the kind of the next two, planned out. So whichever, I'm happy to move either one of those forward next, based on timing. But what did I learn about myself? That I'm good at this. I had a great crew. We had a wonderful shoot. It was really a chill set. I've done shorts before, and I always run a very, I think, kind of happy crew. I sort of lead with, holding the reins lightly. I hire people who really know their job, and I let them do it and bring, their suggestions to me. But it's always a collaboration, and they're always very respectful of each other's talents and, skills. Mm-hmm. And I also got this done in 12 days, like on time, on budget, for what I had. So I think that's a good sort of proof of competency going forward when I went to go and ask for more money for the next film from other people, from investors versus like this is all like debt and donations to get this one up. Mm-hmm. So I hope they'll look at this and see what I could do in a short amount of time and limited funds, and extrapolate from that I could do a good job, going forward.
Mm-hmm. So now, where can people? What's next for Toss It? Still on the festival circuit? Any distribution bites? Where can people or hope to see it eventually?
It's still festival. We do have some distributors looking and a sales agent, and there might be another LA screening that I can't yet talk about until it's confirmed. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is it's very much not yet available for the public. I hope soon.
Well, I hope Gravitas is looking at this film because this is like right up their alley. So I sincerely hope they're one of them. And I know some of the people from Gravitas listen to the show, which is also why I throw it out there.
Thanks for the shout out. They are. So I don't want to let that out of the bag, but we'll see.
No, because this is right in their wheelhouse. And when I was watching the film, that's the first thing I thought is, Gravitas should be looking to pick this up. So, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, Michelle.
Thank you, Debbie.
Oh,
thank you.
Michelle, unfortunately, we're out of time because I have two other writer, director, actors who are coming on the line. This is Annie's fault. Blame Annie. She and I booked all of you today. But
love Annie.
Oh, Annie's great. But I can't.
Annie Jeeves we're talking about.
Yes, Annie Jeeves, indeed, we are talking about. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Please come back on the show again. I would love to have you.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. I would love to come back.
Wonderful. And in the meantime, I will cross my fingers for Toss It. And everybody else can follow the festival circuit.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Michele Remsen, writer, director, actor. Toss It. Look for it on the fest circuit. And crossing our fingers that it gets a distribution deal soon. Now, two incredible guys who made me laugh myself silly. Max Azulay, Matt Porter, 5 Doctors. Way to go, guys. This is a fun film.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. We're excited to be here.
I am welcome to Behind the Lens. I am so thrilled to have you. I had so much fun watching the hypochondriacal Spencer. I can't tell you. I mean, I was I was in stitches. Pardon the pun.
Good. Well, thank you. So was I for much of the movie.
Where did the idea for this film germinate? This is it's not typical. Yeah, we've seen hypochondriacal scenarios before, but not like this with an underlying tie-in as to what really is prompting it and the journey that Spencer goes on.
I'd say it really started when we were a few years out of school. Matt and I have known each other for a long time, since we were literally children. and the third writer on this, Phil, as well. We've all been friends for a very long time. And always knew we wanted to have a career in film and in comedy, and also always riddled with, especially after school, riddled with a certain type of anxiety that was hard to always understand what the source was. But as we started writing it, it became clear that this was therapeutic for us as well. So it really was born out of career anxiety and anxiety about the future, and also this, we were separating from home and from our parents and family, so it was very, very personal.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think for us also we've made a lot of short films together over the years, and this was our first feature after making a handful of short films, and something that we always tended to be drawn towards were these stories where a character gets sort of fixated on the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And I think this was an idea that we actually thought of initially as a short film, and then we sort of realized, well, if you add a couple more doctors, you get sort of a fun sort of road trip movie that kind of investigates, those ideas of wanting to move on from your home, but we have a lot of people in their 20s can relate to this feeling of not quite moving on all the way, leaving the address on your ID, your parents' address, or not updating where you're registered to vote. And for us, the example of that we wanted to latch onto was this idea of traveling back to where you grew up to go to your doctor appointment.
Right, and the moral of the story is if you want to change something from a short film to a long film, add a few more doctors.
Well, and I will confess this to you guys. I've been in LA 38, 39 years now. And for the first number of years after I was out here, I would go to my doctor and dentist back in Philadelphia, in suburban Philadelphia.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, there's something very comforting about it, and it feels like it's practical, but it's really not very practical at all.
Oh.
Yeah, we felt like my character, either he couldn't quite tell if he wanted his doctor or his mommy.
Well, and that's and obviously we see by the end of the film which it is that Spencer really needs, but we're not going to give any spoilers away.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now, some of the idiosyncrasies that you bring into play, not only with the performance of Spencer, but also in his blue notebook. That is hilarious. That blue loose leaf book goes everywhere with all of these, printed things off the internet about, dentistry issues and, potential diseases. That just added so much. And it's every time you see that notebook, you laugh because as we start seeing exactly what all is in there. And when you're consulting for, I have a 2:45 appointment. So, Jay, you got to forget about school. You got to take me to my 2:45. And, where did the impetus for the notebook come? And then, that really worked in so well.
Yeah. Max, you can fill in if I'm forgetting anything, but I think the notebook came in really early on when we started writing. I think we just knew that a movie like this could become very talky and very driven by dialogue in a way that we were comfortable with, but we also wanted to find as many visual elements as possible. The Spencer running out of the car every time they pull up to a new appointment, and and little details like that. And I think for us, the binder was a good example of, even if it's maybe not the most normal way in 2018 to carry around your directions, we kind of like the idea that Spencer there was just a very nice specificity to it, and the binder could just get messier through the movie, just like Spencer does as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I think he was a character who has this sort of OCD fixation on structure and trying to control some element of his life because everything feels very, very out of control. So, he wants reassurance from these doctors that he's okay, and he feels control in being able to structure these appointments. And we also like to show that, quest for control with this object, which is his binder. and he has all his appointments and all the WebMD printouts of all the diseases he might have. Everything in it is kind of his little object that makes him feel like he has some semblance of control in his crazy whirlwind of a life.
And of course, the fact that you picked a color like the aquamarine turquoise that you did, so that it always stands out. Our eyes go right there. We know, what's Spencer doing now? So who got to do the WebMD research to come up with all the symptomology for Spencer's complaints?
We had a team of specialists.
I think
a team of hypochondriacs.
Yeah, I think that team of hypochondriacs is probably just us, the writers, because for us it wasn't that hard to come up with little things that probably aren't anything, but you could absolutely obsess about them and look them up for hours.
Yep, I did it earlier today.
Oh, I'm so glad. Did you find anything new that you need to worry about?
Today?
Yes.
Well, I just turned 30, so my brain's going a little haywire. When I find out what the exact anxiety I'm going to focus on is, I'll call back into the show.
It could be directoritis. Directing your first directoritis, directing your first feature. I'm curious because you guys obviously knew you were going to direct this. You wrote this. You're going to direct this. How did you approach directing, especially with the two of them? Was somebody more in tune with wrangling cast? Was this a work in progress, just handoff between camera and in front of the camera? What was that process like?
Well, it was something we really thought a lot about because the two of us are directors both together and separately, and the three of us, including our friend Phil, have done a lot of work together in situations that are pretty bare bones. We've done short films where it's really just the three of us with a couple other people on set. So we wanted to figure out how to take the model that had worked for us when projects were smaller and be able to take it to something bigger and not have the crew look at us like we're crazy saying, well, these are the three people in charge, and they would feel like, well, who do we listen to? This is going to devolve into chaos. But we did a lot of pre-production, the really intense amount of pre-production. We had every shot. We took every shot as a photograph using a particular app that can mimic focal length. And so before the movie started, we literally you could flip through a flip book of every shot. And that gave us a certain amount of ability to revise our shot list and to improve our coverage in each scene beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And in addition to that, when it came to working on set, we were just pretty good at beforehand agreeing on how we would deal with problems when one person was acting, being able to give them the space to disappear into it, and the other two could sort of carry the torch.
Mm-hmm. So because so much of this is, as you mentioned, it's a road pick going to doctors. And so much of this is not interiors. It's traveling from point A to point B. It's, Max, you're constantly jumping out of the car. Matt, you poor thing, you're trying to get him into the car to drive the car.
Right.
So working with your DP, with Zach Cooperstein, what kind of discussions did you have in designing the logistics, the lighting and the camera logistics in particular, because you're not just in one set place?
Yeah. Well, another aspect, or Max, were you going to say something?
No,
I
go ahead.
was going to say, working with Zach. Zach is an incredible DP, and he actually was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award for this other this horror movie that he did a little while after ours. He's a really talented DP, and he was really helpful at working with us early on to make sure that we found a look for the film that didn't make the town feel too frenetic, but made the characters' anxiety still come out. We didn't want it to feel like this town was dark and like a negative place to be. It really is Spencer's misunderstanding of his town that makes it brings him the anxiety. So we tried to have this in the design as well, to have real color and warmth But we then kind of tried to balance that with a lot of camera movement and scenes that we would cover with only 1 or 2 or 3 shots that were moving throughout the scene. So as a result, we sort of found this rhythm where Spencer's character was expressed through these shots that maybe the lighting and the tone of the visual was still relatively warm and inviting, but the way the camera moved was kind of mimicking Spencer's anxiety. And then on the flip side, for Jay, for my character, there was more of an emphasis on these wider sort of, what we called them sad wides, these wide shots of him sort of sitting alone, kind of quietly, or having a little moment alone, that were still handheld, so there was a little bit of that anxiety in it, but it communicated something different. There was very rarely that the camera would be bustling alongside Jay in the way that it bustled along with Spencer. So
right.
I think that was the approach.
Yeah, and the movie takes place over the course of a single day,
Mm-hmm.
and as it goes on, I think the aesthetic becomes a little more comforting, especially as Spencer's mind starts to get eased, and like Matt said, the town starts to feel warm and inviting, and that was important to us to also mirror the character's arc of starting to feel comfortable, and like he might not even want to leave.
Well, and saying that you might not even want to leave, it's like we get to that beautiful money shot of Spencer sitting at the train station with the warm red brick behind him. You know, the old school station setup that you see back east more so than anywhere else. And just sitting on the bench as the sunset's coming in and the little dog on the... It's just, that is a money shot. It's beautiful. And it's like, oh, God, why would you want to leave? It's just, it was perfection, total peace at that moment. And,
right.
And I just thought it was
Thank you.
Beautifully... It's a beautiful visual arc that you create within this film. And, you know, kudos to you for the construct, especially with defining, you know, both characters through camera movement as well as performance. Because I know that is not easy to do.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, this is I grew up in this town, Hastings, that we shot the movie in, and so did the third writer on this film, and Matt grew up nearby. So it was interesting to sort of see the town, and, you know, we've been away for a while, and you know, being home, you do attach to it a certain anxiety or a certain, you know, you see it through the lens of the past. But seeing the town fresh by shooting it and creating an aesthetic was really interesting. You got a new appreciation for where you grew up, and I'm happy that it comes out in the visuals.
Well, did the town embrace you coming back and shooting?
Oh yeah,
yeah. The town was really supportive. The high school was really supportive. A lot of the kids in the movie are actual high school students that were. We even did audition some more actor, you know, kids that were looking to act from outside the town. But we ended up actually really preferring a lot of the kids that auditioned for us from the town. So it was very, very much a hometown affair, and all of us during the shoot were living in the houses of various friends and friends of friends. So it was a little summer campy in that sense as well. And the town wrote about the film while we were there and was, you know, really helpful with permits and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it was a really great kind of coming home experience.
Well, now that you said, you know, talking about the high school, I've got to ask you about the art fair, the production design for the art fair. That whole hallway, the art fair sequences, it's absolutely stunning to look at. And the fact that it was all hand-done, you know, artwork from students, it's something we don't see in most films anymore. Everything is more polished, it's cleaner. But this is really, you know, it's a little more old school, a little more tactile, and you've really got a great use of color. You know, just absolutely so well done. Was that done by the school, your production designer? Where did that design come into play?
Well, thank you. We really appreciate that color palette worked, and it was definitely something that was 100% our production designer. I mean, the school definitely has a natural feeling that tends towards the palette of what we wanted, so it definitely wasn't as far for it to go. But in terms of the art on the walls and the color that you see in the art fair itself at the very end, like when everything's fully set up, the palette was fully built out by our production designer, Gabby Moses, who is really incredibly talented and was very hands-on with color. Like you mentioned the binder earlier, she was very good at keeping that particular color blue out of the rest of the movie, for example. So she was really great at keeping the palette consistent. And we were also lucky that the part of why this palette felt right is because this was the town we were picturing, and a lot of the town itself had buildings that really fit this aesthetic. It's not a place with a lot of chains, a lot of sort of clean white corners. It's a little more of a lived-in local business kind of a town. So, and the high school is similar.
I would add to that. I mean, there's a moment in the high school where my character is looking at a poster of a play. My character, was a big kind of high school actor, so where he learned to want to act and perform. And so there's a moment, where he's looking at this old poster from high school of a play he was in, looking at his old self, and that was real. That was a play I was in, middle school or early high school, looking at myself in the poster. We found it, so it was kind of like it was a strange sort of almost out of body experience to be suddenly back in the high school where you're feeling all these things, but now you're making a movie about being there. And so it really was a journey for us, the shooting. I mean, you're kind of reckoning with the past where you grow up, but it was also nice to feel like they were so inviting and warm and, very singular experience.
Well, the icing on the cake with any film is, music. Music can lead, which is never good. It can follow. It can be totally disjointed and not match. You've got some great music here. What kind of discussions did you have with Andy Clausen about the music that you ended up with in this film?
We really, and I know that Phil, our third musketeer on this, would really appreciate you bringing up the music, because that's another aspect that we were always very committed to finding a really nice soundtrack for the film. Even as a really low-budget movie, we knew that, we had this vision of this sort of 60s and 70s kind of like soul and blues and sort of like this feeling that feels a little nostalgic, and we knew that to do that could get very expensive. But working with our score composer Andy Clausen and also with our music supervisor Joseph Miller, both of them were really mindful at giving the film overall that kind of more nostalgic feeling. I mean, with Andy, we had some temp music in there for months and months of editing, and he was very good at storing that right in the garbage and thinking about the energy and emotion of the movie. And we put together a band with live horns and a extremely talented group of musicians, and we recorded it all in one day. But it was like recording a band. Like, it wasn't as maybe the score is not maybe as reactive to the film as other styles of score. It was very much like we wanted to create these little song moments just without any vocals. And then we have in the film, thanks to Joseph, we have a couple of legitimate 60s era sort of B-side soul and R&B songs that were amazing songs, and they just, luckily for us, are sort of hidden in these libraries of old songs where it didn't break the bank too bad to be able to put them in a movie like ours.
Mm-hmm. And Matt and I also wrote a song for the movie called Ribosomes, which you may remember we played together. And that was, it's not I wouldn't call it a good song, but it is a song we wrote.
And it
scientifically
fits.
Very inaccurate, wouldn't you say, Matt?
We Googled Ribosomes for maybe about 2 minutes.
The characters in the film are supposed to have written a song in, back in high school for a science project, and they end up playing it again in the movie, and it's about ribosomes. But clearly, neither of them had done the homework to know what ribosomes were exactly.
No, and of course, you didn't have Google back then. So,
no.
God help if you would have gone to the library to actually look it up when you were students. That would not happen.
Right. That's beyond these characters' capabilities.
So how exciting is it now? You've come through this journey. Finally, tomorrow, everybody has the chance to see Five Doctors because you're digital and VOD tomorrow.
I mean, it's very exciting. It's a little bittersweet in a way. I think Matt and I have talked about kind of dealing with it on some level. It's been such a huge part of our lives for the last 6 years. This grounding one big project that's always been in some stage of development, whether it's writing or shooting or editing or whatever. So now that it's out there, it's great and exciting, but it's also like it's almost a feeling of loss because you're losing this thing that's been such a huge part of your life. But I think the next leg of the journey will be great too. Hopefully people enjoy it and can find it. But it's strange. It's really been like a long time working on this.
Yeah, and I'll just add quickly that I think we started writing it in 2012, I believe, and we've sort of been growing up through the process of making this movie. Like, we've gone...
We were 24 when we started writing it. Now we're both 30.
Yeah, we're both 30. So it's like, in a way, something that has been really incredible is to see how a project like this, after so many years, it kind of grows up with you. Even when we wouldn't make major changes to the project, we would sort of appreciate it in a new way every year through each process, through each step of the movie. And I think now it really feels like it's kind of met us where we are in terms of what we're thinking about, the themes in the movie and the humor in the movie and the heart in the movie. It's like, I think I feel more proud of it than I ever have. And not because it's exactly what we were picturing when we were 24, but because it sort of, I think, has elevated with us to a point where it feels a little more. There's more depth to it. There's more to it than I think we even realized when we wrote it. So,
definitely. I mean, I think it is more emotional for both of us. I'm guessing for both of us than we even are admitting to ourselves to be letting it go. Because I even feel a little kind of numb this week just letting it go. It's strange, but I agree with Matt. I feel proud of it and just proud of us that we powered through.
Well, I'm glad you powered through because it is, as I said, I just think it's a delight. I laughed myself silly in this. But then you have moments of real heart. And, that shot of Spencer at the train station with the dog. Okay, that just killed me. That killed me. Because it just,
right. Well, thank you.
The poignancy
so
of that journey is just, it's something for everybody. And as I said, I mean, heck, when I first came to LA, I would still fly back east to go to the doctor.
Right.
So there's so much truth in here. And when you're writing not just what you know, but from the truth within you, it really comes out on the screen. And I mean, you guys did a great job. You really did.
We really very much appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, are we working on another film now?
We're always working on new things. The three of us, both together and separately, are always busy with new stuff. So we'll definitely shout to the rooftops when the next project is coming through the pipeline, and we'll make sure that you and everybody knows it's coming.
Well, you guys have an open invitation to come back on Behind the Lens anytime. Anytime.
Appreciate it. We'll be back.
Hopefully. No, you'll be back. Let's just leave it at that. You'll be back. Guys, Max Azulay, Matt Porter, thank you so much. Five Doctors. Everyone can see it on digital and VOD tomorrow, February 27th. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Five Doctors. Look on the Fest circuit for Toss It. And that is all the time we have today. Again, join us next week. Dick Cavett will be here at the half-hour mark of the show. And, you can check out all of our shows if you missed them. BehindTheLensOnline.net, Behind the Lens on iTunes, Behind the Lens on Stitcher, Behind the Lens on IndiePopcorn.fm, and a bunch of other places. So, until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.